challenges that we are facing.
And co-develop our own selves to become the best for our client work.
With Game of Pods, it's very much about personal growth, but you are able to see across the board how your colleagues are growing and how you both are evolving to better serve clients.
It's a platform that was designed for us and set to carry the torch across the finish line, but it does it in a way that showcases to our clients at all stages that our communities,
our methodologies,
and it's enabled our teams to hit the market and achieve product desired outcomes faster.
So follow us on this journey. Our communities and pods are developing, testing and growing it each and every day to bring it to agile teams all over the world. We can't wait to welcome you to Game of Pods.
Have you heard? Programmers Week is coming up.
September 13th through the 17th. But this year, we're going big.
We're going bold.
We're going beyond.
This year, in addition to all the amazing tech talks, keynotes, and discussions you're used to, we're adding in the Product Day.
Product Day.
Join us for a special edition to Programmers Week, Monday, September 20th, when we take our love for software product engineering to a whole new level.
You'll hear from product experts on the ins and outs of product thinking, the approaches, the technologies, and everything in between that are driving great software products around the world.
So join us and discover your faster path to product value with Programmers Week 2021.
Thank you very much for coming, and I hope you like this presentation. Expand your tool set, at least.
Programmers Week for me as a presenter was more of an opportunity that Softvision provided to exhibit both my technical skills as well as interactive skills, because I think it is very important in today's IT industry.
Programmers Week, it's been an exciting and a learning week for all the Softvisioners across the globe.
I think it's a good occasion for us to share some knowledge, to understand each of our communities.
I'm so excited about what happened here. It's a big event for us.
Keep learning and hold presentations.
How UX professionals thrive within cross-functional teams through learning.
Some of us have enough strength to build that kind of motivation to really jump from where they're standing to the top.
6 years ago, we started our annual tech event. This is to celebrate the hard work and dedication of you, our programmers, product and design experts around the world.
I'm glad to be part of Programmers Week as a speaker for the second time.
Why is Programmers Week important to me? Because knowledge is important, and sharing it is how we learn and grow.
Programmers Week is the place where I'm gonna start my rookie year as a speaker.
We could say it's sort of a party for people who are really curious about what happens in the software world.
Programmers Week is a place that gathers around the communities, is the place that takes you outside of your day-to-day routine.
Programmers Day is important because it recognizes us as people that improve everyone's lives.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the session on the future of software as part of Programmers Week, happening on International Programmers Day, the 256th day of the year, which has been rolling around the world ever since these sessions started in Australian time yesterday or today or whatever it is, today, the long 256th day of the year. I'm David Kirkpatrick. I'm a journalist based in New York with a company called Techonomy. We're big believers in the importance of technology and software, and very pleased and proud to be working with Cognizant Softvision today. So what we're going to be talking about is big picture, where software is going, with a special emphasis on how software is going to be created and who's going to create it and what software is going to be used for as we go forward, because we live in obviously a software-centric world, a world that is increasingly technologized and digital. Cognizant Softvision is right at the heart of that transition. So that's a lot of what we'll be talking about. Now, let me just briefly introduce you to our three panelists. I'll start with Rajesh Nambiar, who is President of Digital Business and Technology for Cognizant, where he brings together the industry's most compelling technology, vision, strategy, solutions, partnerships, and expertise into a single integrated offering that runs all of the IT services at Cognizant. Rajesh also serves as chairman of Cognizant India and chairs the Cognizant Foundations in the US and India. So great to have you with us, Rajesh. Ursula Morgenstern is Cognizant's president for Global Growth Markets, which covers all of Cognizant's markets outside of North America. In this role, she helps to globalize Cognizant's business across multiple dimensions and geographies, including investing in strong local leadership and accessing the best talent globally for clients. And finally, Andreas Angelani, who has the dual responsibility of serving as CEO of Cognizant Softvision, which is he's sort of our host here today, which is a division of Cognizant Digital's business, which is run by Rajesh, as well as Andreas is also Chief Product Engineering Officer for Cognizant. He's been running Softvision now for more than 4 years, and his experience in design and engineering disciplines is more than appropriate given our discussion today on the future of software. So welcome to all three of you. And I'd love to start with you, Andreas. Just talk from your perspective and the perspective of Softvision. When you think of the future of software, what are the key priorities for you?
Thank you, David. And first of all, I'd like to welcome everybody to our 7th Programmers Week. This is the Coders Week, so it's a great celebration for all of us. Most of us were coders one day. You know, we're a little bit rusty, as we grow in leadership, but it's always great to have this celebration. So, yeah, so in terms of where I see software going and the key priorities is, you know, we have to see that the software is everywhere these days. And we've sort of evolved from a more utilitarian view of software back in the day when we started as coders, as programmers, where we just, you know, we would, you know, build software with a more transactional view, with a more, you know, I need to get this done. Software will help me automate it, you know, will help, you know, simplify mathematical and algorithmic, scenarios, and just have a very simple interface. That was the back in the day to sort of a utilitarian view of how software could help us to a more experiential view of how software now impacts. You know, the reality is that the software has transformed from money to banking to experiences to connections to absolutely everything, and really is a vehicle to reimagine industry in a way, right? Banks are creating their own digital banks. The logistics companies are including software and things connected to the internet to understand better and increase the efficiency of their fleet. Healthcare is is leveraging the connection ability of software in a way to connect doctors with patients. So, there is a whole experiential view. So we've, as priorities, we've basically invested quite a lot in creating playbooks that are more inclusive, where not only the traditional coder is part of a team, but also we're including other disciplines in the creation of software that were not thought of before. So we see that the diversity in the schools of thought that make software more experiential is kind of critical right now to effect that transformation that we want to have. So those playbooks are really they're really important for us, which means we have we've had and obviously are constantly evolving in embracing different cultures, diverse roles, and creating a playbook where people that come from different places can understand each other, because again, it's as experiential as you can take it at this point. So it's technology and experience and outcome orientation. It's very business driven how we build software today, always looking for different types of outcomes versus just fulfilling a transaction.
So in a sense, as software defines our experience in life more and more places we go and things we do in our homes, at work, everywhere, then the act of creating software has to understand the human dimension of what that experience entails. Is that essentially what you're saying?
It's exactly right, yes. And that requires a lot of change in terms of how you build, the people that you hire and train, and the methodologies that you use. So it's a more complex design, strategy, design, and production process now versus before. Yeah,
and we'll get into some of those details as we go through the hour here. Great, thank you. So Ursula, you're in dialogue with big partners and customers of Cognizant and Softvision around the world. What are you hearing from them about what they expect to be happening going forward? And when you look at the future of software through the lens of that constant dialogue, what do you think about most of all?
Again, picking up what Andres said about the human and user centricity, I mean, we have seen in the last 18 months unprecedented level of change in businesses. And when COVID hit, I was actually based in Germany, and there were many companies who had until then contemplated working from home 4 days per week. Can I really, as a manager, manage people who are working from home in a decentralized manner? So really, really a conservative view on working from home. And of course, COVID hit. In 2 days, all these companies had to switch to remote working from home. And this level of change is accelerating, and we are seeing disruption in our, in our own industry, but also in the industry of our customers continuing. So, and the change, software is not back office, it's not the finance system, it's not the HR system, it's integral to the products of our customers and the way how our customers deliver their products to their clients. And that really brings software into the heart of every modern business. And I had recently the pleasure just to talk to customers who joined us at a Formula One event. And it was really what astonished me. It was all about change management, people change management, and user adoption, worrying that how do I manage this huge business transformation with my users who will be in all parts of the enterprise, and how do I make it easy to use? And one of the customers was using the mobile phone and the smartphone and saying, look at how little we as a normal user actually use of the technology. So again, how do I make the most out of technology? So from my perspective, business transformation, the rate of change, how do you manage that? And how do you actually get things out of the most out of the software we are developing, which really brings back the question. A developer nowadays, in my mind, needs to be able to communicate with the end users, put themselves in the shoes of the end users, and really understand, how do I make that simple to use? Because how do I make that easy to use? And therefore, the ability to not only understand the technology, but how technology is being used is really becoming vital.
Yeah, so another dimension in how the future of software is changing, if on the one hand, software is defining experience, what we've just gone through with COVID is a demonstration of how quickly things can change. We already knew the pace of change was accelerating in the world, but now we've had a very concrete proof that certain things can change practically literally overnight. And so the software of the future has to be able to adapt to that. And we have to basically create software that enables that, which is really interesting. I mean, if you have more, we can come back to that, but if you have any more to say on that, I'd love to hear it, or we'll go to Rajesh right away. Yeah, we could just explore that. I just am trying to summarize here. So Rajesh, so you run all of the IT services work for Cognizant globally, which includes Softvision and includes software as well as a lot of other stuff. But so when you are looking at this question of where it's all going and the way software has to change, what are your priorities and how do you think of it, particularly organizationally?
Thank you, David. Really appreciate having me with you today. Let me also start by welcoming all of you to this beautiful Programmers Week, and I was thrilled to be part of this when Andres told me that this is a big event, and didn't realize the magnitude of what you guys do, but I'm very, very happy to be part of it. And I happen to be in New York this week, so that's actually better from a timing point of view as well. So thank you. Look, to your question, David, I think both Andres and Ursula were talking about this whole impact, and you mentioned that as well, David, in terms of the impact of digital in many ways. I think the whole the period that we are in, with the COVID, in my mind, one thing which really happened because of COVID is that not just the companies and everybody, especially the organizations, all of them got a lot more digital a lot sooner than what they would have done otherwise. And as you said, it actually pushed companies to do things which they would have never thought of before. So in many ways, while we were all working with the digital transformation of organizations, and we all work with large corporations around the world, and we were trying to get them into being more digital, but now that transformation, has been hastened by about maybe 5 years or so, right? What we were doing today is what we would have done probably much later. So the whole, that's why you will see, unfortunately, COVID has been a very divisive in many ways, because it made some industries do really, really well and others not so well. And we were on the lucky side of the IT technology, software type of organizations. We're all in the other side of the equation, which means that we are growing faster than what we were doing pre-COVID. But when you take an industry like a travel or automobiles and so on and so forth, maybe they are on the other side of the equation where they had a lot more impact. But that aside, I believe that we are on an inflection point. Why do I think that? Because I think this truly will change the way companies look at technology broadly. And I'll come to software in a second. But I believe that both as a company and of course also from a perspective of business transformation, we're all at an inflection point. And companies need to shift their business and their thinking to be more digital, more product focused, especially companies that have historically thought of themselves not as a product company. So these are all very, very important for us to sort of get into the bandwagon, if we may. And just to sort of wrap this thinking around what I was trying to say, now every company will have to be a software company, which is a bit of a stretch, you might think, but it is so true. Think of what is the example? So let's say automobiles, for example, right? And today they are valued more for the software than the combustion engine or whatever that you want to doing in an automobile, traditional automobile way. And so again, I don't want to give you examples, but if you see a company like Tesla, for example, is valued a lot more than all the other rest of the automobile companies put together, and so on and so forth. So I think it gives you a sense that whether you're in automobile, whether you're in healthcare, whether you're in wherever, you have to be a software company to begin with. Meaning that your reliance on technology, especially around software and data and the platforms that we build, those are so going to be that much more critical for you to be viable as an organization, valued the right way in the marketplace, and for you to truly deliver. And I think Andreas and you were talking about this whole software defines the experience. And how do you deliver the experience? The experience is not going to be just based on the engine or just based on the look and feel of the car, but the kind of software that you're going to be putting on the car. So that defines in many ways the experience that you could create with the software. So that's where I believe we're going to have a huge shift in the way we look at software in the future, and not just the software, but software as part of the broader tech stack that we would build for companies, which would make them really, really effective as we move forward.
Yeah, thanks. So business transformation is the end goal here, and societal transformation even beyond that. Feel free, anybody, to jump in anytime. But just even though this is a Softvision event, I thought, Andreas, it might be good for you to just briefly explain what Softvision does, what it is, and then I wanted to ask you to talk a little bit. We've talked about the context, but how is software going to be written? Talk a little bit about the many changes you're starting to make in that regard.
Yeah, so I'd like to pick up from one of Rajesh's points, and I think it will explain Softvision as well. That inflection point that he mentioned. That's a very important point, because I think that's where companies are going to start, sort of distinguishing themselves from others, right? It's just going to start separating this out. It has started already. We have the benefit as Cognizant, Softvision, and overall as Cognizant, we're a tech company. So we've been playing with a lot of things. We're playing with, fully automation tools. We've been playing with no code. We've been playing with things that accelerate our production capabilities, makes it more efficient. The way that we see these technologies moving on, and the incorporation of AI into the software development process, is more like augmentation rather than replacement, right? We don't see that AI is going to replace the mind of a programmer, but we see that AI is going to help. It's going to help the programmer do, eliminate or reduce those tedious tasks. Will help analyze algorithms, will help to detect when there are issues in the efficiency of the code. All those things that, we don't like as programmers, never like tests, right? We never like to kind of double check. The machine will do that for us. And in a way, we're starting to do that now with certain automation tools, but that's going to go nuts, right? It's going to go to the full extent. So in doing that, the key here is that, and a lot of clients come to us because we represent the software product engineering portion within Cognizant. So we're like a point of consult when the client comes and says, "Hey, my playbooks are not, my culture is not very receptive to this cross-functional, multiple role way of delivering software, our orientation to outcomes. We build stuff. Sometimes that stuff works. Sometimes it doesn't. We build and rebuild and we do things many times. We want to be agile, but we don't know if we are really agile. We use all the words and the terms, but we don't know if our culture is truly agile." So that's the questions that we get with clients all the time. And we've been digitally native since the beginning, because the origination point of Softvision was like launching or co-developing products with software with Silicon Valley companies. We were like the back of the house. So the DNA is pretty much innovation centric, and then we scale the company with that culture. So for us, what we are seeing is that what we are helping them now is figure out what that playbook is. When it's build, discard, rebuild. So there's no construction, right, in the software, and that's very different from what the tech companies do. Tech companies build a foundation and evolve the foundation. They don't, and when they discard, it's because it's just too old, but it's already being done, right? It's just part of the cycle. That requires a huge shift in culture to make sure that whatever we're building, we're going to preserve, and that has to do with how the teams work together. That's the reality and the culture of those teams. So we've been playing a lot of in creating these different playbooks for companies to help them, not only delivering alongside them, but also helping them transform, right? We call this approach transforming while performing. So it's like, while you're developing product, change your playbook, allow best practices to come in. And again, this is not about just, there's a lot of industry that says agile coaching and all that kind of stuff. As technologists, we do not really believe in that. We believe in just, software engineers doing engineering and evolving as engineers and incorporating other roles along, right? Because there are a lot of methods to drive this that are not really hands-on. We believe that the only way that truly transforms is being truly, just doing it, right? Building the thing, if that makes sense.
Well, it makes sense. And in fact, what both you and Rajesh are talking about is integrating the software creation process into the core fabric of the enterprise, right? The software is just part of every company's a software company. So, the engineers that are building the software have to be deeply part of the whole dialogue. Anyway, Ursula, I know you got something to add, so please jump in.
Yeah, while Andres, you said, I think engineering something, I was thinking, but what does the business want? The business wants speed,
yes,
quality. Let's not forget that. In a world which is going faster and gets more complex, more technology, Internet of Things, physical and virtual, everything. I think that's the challenge for the software industry, for the development world or for programmers. How do I make something, and then, as I said, the end users, and I'm not seeing yet to, let's say, to the satisfaction of the business who's buying or paying for the software, that, equation solved, that yes, we give you something fast with high quality in a very complex world. And that's, for me, I think still, and the worry I have representing business is that actually the accelerating rate of change is leading to more complexity, therefore to more problems, therefore to more delay in implementing the software. And that's, of course, my wish to the world of programmers and software developers. How do we make it more predictable in this, I must admit, not easy world? Of course, you're getting AI. You said, that the development of, technology will support you in developing faster, more output per developer, because that's what we need as well. As we know, COVID has led to what we call the big resignation in all industries. And of course, there are not enough developers in the world to feed the demand of companies. So for me, that's a big, big question, which I think is not yet answered, how we're dealing with that. And if you have...
No, you're right. Sorry to interrupt you. I think you bring up a very interesting point, right? I think when you look at what the market wants, while this is the Programmers Week, and of course I'm a programmer too. 30 years ago, I did a lot of coding. So when you look at from that point of view, we obviously get excited about what we do on the programmer side and how we do coding and so on and so forth. But let's not forget that at the end of the day, if you're in a business context, it has to make a difference for the organizations around the world. And that's exactly what you're bringing up, saying that we need to have the speed, the agility, then the ability for people to sort of really. I will take it one step further and say, you got to solve a business problem for the client, and that's when you're irrespective of how much coding you're doing, how wonderfully you do the coding, etc. The experience and what you really solve requires a huge amount of effort, and then that requires business thinking, and that's where you're bringing up an interesting point. I also want to add one dimension to it, and which is while Andras represents this whole new generation of how we build software, let's not forget that organizations today exist in the world with a lot of software, which people like I wrote 30 years ago, and they are, were very good at that point in time when we wrote them, but no longer very sexy, and then they no longer have all this good stuff that Andrea was talking about. However, there's a lot of business logic buried into those. There's a lot of data buried into those. So it is important that when we solve a client's problem, most often you come across a situation where you got to go back and dig a little bit from their existing set of systems and databases, etc., to solve a modern problem. So you will find this whole marriage between the traditional legacy type of work, which people have been built over, unless you are a born cloud organization, right? You came into the being in the last 5 years or 10 years. The large banks, the large healthcare provider, the large manufacturing organization, the automobile companies, and so on and so forth, they have ton of those legacies sitting in their systems. So it is important for us to not forget that to do all this nice, good stuff that programmers want to do today, will have to depend on a little bit of an interface with the old world. And that's when I think, again, Andras will tell you more in terms of our ability as a company, if you may, to go back and do the right level of microservices and stuff like that from the old systems to feed into the new world and make some of our new systems a lot more attractive and faster and so on and so forth, will become much more interesting for us to do, right? So remember, this is now going to be a marriage between, how we do traditional and how do we do modern, digital, world-class, agile, and all of that, together as a company. And that I believe that a unique talent, a few companies like Cognizant possess.
I mean, that's a key, and Ursula as well. First of all, the business orientation is that how do we align, that engineer that wants to code and wants to create cool things into delivering a goal or achieving a goal for the business. And that, again, it's a factor of how mature your playbook is to make sure that that individual is motivated to realize a business goal. So that's very important. And it's just a factor of moving from a very project-centric organization into a more product-centric organization, because products are aligned to business outcomes, and that the developer, that coder that is part of a team, needs to be connected to that business outcome and rewarded, compensated, incentivized, and motivated about producing that impact for the business. So that's very important. It is a journey. We can't say, oh, we're done. It's a journey. It takes time to get to that level of maturity. So from one point of view. The other aspect that I think that it's critical here is the underlying architecture and that the systems that power the business today. So when you go to traditional industry, you can't forget that there are years and years and years of evolution of existing business that do run on software today, but not the software that we see as the AI-centric, software of the future. So how do we port that software into the new world? It's also pretty key. And again, here is that diversity in these different roles as we form teams. In our view, this thing about the two worlds or the two faces doesn't really work well together, because you just have the old and the new, and there's competition between the old and the new. The old retains power because that's where the business runs today. The new is where people want to put money on. So there's a tension that breaks the spectrum. There's a lot of time wasted in that cycle of reconciliation between the old and the new. So our point of view is cross-functional. The goal is to transform. We go forward together. We lift up the old, we integrate with the old, we make it new, and then the program is owned by everybody rather than by just the new kids start coming in and they have the cool, the cool offices, right? It doesn't work like that. A lot of companies have tried different ways, and we've advised several. The reality is that as a company with the size and scale of Cognizant, we live in both worlds. but we also interact very well between the two. And we have been sort of a bridge between the old and the new world in companies where that division is a little bit more black and white. In our world is very, very gray, and we like those degrees because that way we can combine, right? And the great thing is that, you know, some people, it's great to see teams that are made up of guys that like working in the last full stack automation frameworks, work with guys that have maybe mainframe experience, and they're actually working together. It's much better model than saying, oh no, the mainframe guys are going to finish this interface and then you're going to connect to it. It's a very different way of seeing the program and the product as a whole. Does it make sense?
It does, absolutely.
I want to just briefly mention, we're going to take questions from the audience, so feel free to get them in the chat when you're ready. And we've seen a number of key points made here about the landscape, but one of the things that Ursula mentioned, and I think Andres, you're really concerned about, is the question that we don't have enough people to do all of this. I mean, we are in a very weird point where the needs of society for software are overwhelming. We're talking about how central it is, but there just aren't enough people. So how do we deal with that? Anybody can jump in on that question.
On the other hand, I was just reading, David, an article saying by 2040 we might need no developers anymore. I'm sure Andres disagrees with that. As we heard, is because AI and tools and platforms might do a large part, but I would say in the next 5 years, we're definitely seeing the crunch and we're feeling that. And I think that's where I'm really interested to get input from everybody. How do we make it more productive? How do we create more output? Because the needs of the businesses in the world are tremendous.
Look, I will mention something, and then of course Andreas will have the final word and the real answer to all the questions that we have on the talent. But let me tell you this though, when you look at talent at scale, at this point in time, it's a very unique situation. I would say the whole of during the pandemic, I think what we really got into is this whole notion of, people don't have to physically move anywhere, or even they could sit in their study rooms and then change companies like crazy. And worldwide, I mean, this is not just a US phenomena or a India phenomena or a European phenomena. This is worldwide. I think there's a huge movement of this talent between companies. And that's what I think Ursula kind of referred to this as a, what did you say that, Ursula? A world of resignation, or
big resignation is the term now.
Yeah, whatever, yeah. So this is, in my mind, a unique situation. But I don't think this is going to last forever. I believe that it will settle down. And I think right now people are running crazy. It doesn't matter whether you're a software company, whether you're a bank, or whether anybody, you're all experiencing. And recently I heard a large investment bank saying that their resignations were upwards of 35% attrition rate, and so on and so forth. So I think we will all go through this process for a little bit of time. I don't think anything is going to change it. It's not going to be very company specific. Of course, within the range, you might have less or more, depending on how you treat your people and what do you do with them, the opportunities that you provide, and so on and so forth. However, having said all that, the world is moving towards, in one end, the need for having very specific capabilities and skills that are increasing by the day. At the same time, what Ursula was mentioning is that on the other hand, the more repetitive work, in many ways, how do you really check in your code? How do you get it tested? How do you get it regression test, CI/CD type of activities? Lots of them are getting automated. There's a lot of applications around AI. And I love the way Andres was saying, in terms of saying that we always believe that automation and the AI capabilities will only augment the programmer. So and also for higher level of productivity. In the same way, a doctor, for example, with the right set of artificial intelligence and automation and everything else, will be a lot more productive it won't replace the doctor. The doctor will still be around. Instead of seeing 10 patients, he'll be seeing 100 patients. The ability for them to see something, because you don't waste time around doing a lot of things that they would have done otherwise. So same way with the programmer, it makes him or her a lot more productive. And then what you're going to see is an era of augmented reality. In many ways, you're going to be using a lot of AI ML capabilities to make a programmer about 100 times more productive and write more code or no code, right? In this sense, because I believe there's a revolution going on. We can talk about it separately in terms of how there's a reduced number of codes which are written and more in terms of assembled and so on. So it's a different topic. We'll come to that in a second. But it's about augmenting this programmer to do a lot more. And hence, you will find this duality between, in some parts of our business, you're going to find that less reduction of demand for programmers. In other parts, you'll have more demand for programmers, and they're going to be a lot more nimble and augmented and ability for them to do things equipped with this artificial intelligence and automation, etc. Andras?
Yeah, so totally. What we're seeing is that there's the pandemic sort of put us in this accelerated shift. And we were seeing that, yes, we're going to use more automation and no code and low code. And yes, but now things are like going in hyperdrive on that path. And also the aspect of hybrid work sort of impacted the developer as well. In the creation, or I would say the acceleration of other markets of developers, which is, I don't know if you've seen so far, but the freelance market is going nuts these days because people have figured out that they wanted to work from home and they don't want to depend on just working for a company, and they have enough work because, I was reading I think there's a study by United Nations that less than 2% of the world is who actually produces software. So imagine that, software is everywhere. I mean, the talent gap is increasing. Another issue is that it takes more time to build specialist developers these days because complexity is increasing. What is a full stack engineer, for example? It takes a long time to build a full stack engineer. It's more of a, we used to call them green dogs. Like, it's very, very difficult to find the people that are really, really great in a lot of aspects. So we're specializing more and more, which means that there will be a lot of more role fragmentation, which means that you have to really choreograph that team if you want that team to perform. And as per Ursula's point, what is the unit? How do we increase that unit of productivity by engineer in a way that is sustainable without so much fragmentation, right? So the balance here is the key, and how we grow these people is also key. Because what we are seeing as well is that schools, especially the traditional education system, is building all kinds of levels of coders and developers, and then we have to basically, as we bring them in, we have to kind of baseline them into what's going to be a productive developer, right, in a team. So there's a lot of work that we didn't have to do before as private companies or public companies, in the case of Cognizant. Non-government or non-educational systems are building these developers. So we are sort of arriving to a model where we will have this duality of incubation and realization of work. So incubation is we're bringing people in, we're training them up, putting them in lower skilled, kind of low complexity type of work, maybe more maintenance work, more so that they practice in the skill, they incubate, and then we migrate them to realization, which is the high-end type of work, so that then we can absorb a much wider quantity of people sustainably, right? It works for the fortune of being able to do this at scale. So, and then bridge them out and realize them into high level work. That creates a path. But also, we are working, and this is something that we're launching. We're launching Game of Pods, for example, one of our products during Programmers Week, which is what is the ultimate playbook for these teams to operate and mature as they move along and they interact as a team? What is it that we measure? Like Ursula was saying, what is the quality? What is the velocity, right? What is it that we measure, the product impact? But as well as that, what kind of best practices they have to employ, and somebody has to check on those best practices. So we built software able to help us build better software, right? And this is something that's very new, but it's going to be very trendy because in the future, we see ourselves potentially also connecting to a marketplace where we give them components to develop, right? Not everybody has to be a Cognizant employee. We can extend this out to the external communities. We haven't done it yet. We have to check all this, but we believe that there is a future in codifying what we build so well that we can send out pieces of software to be built by the world community outside and then bring them in, right? So we have a lot of work to do. Put it that way.
All three of you have said things that in one way or another suggest that a much broader range of people will be building software in the future, right? We got a question from the audience. What kind of skills are going to be necessary for programmers in the future? So part of the way of answering that, I'm going to refer back to what Ursula said before about what might be the case in 2040. If it's true that we'll have so much back-end capability that what that might mean is software will be so deeply integrated into everything that happens that we don't even think of it as discrete from business anymore. So we don't think of programmers anymore, right? So if that's the case, isn't it true that we've really got to educate a broader community about the nature of software using the kind of tools you were just talking about, Andreas? I guess I'd just love to hear thoughts about the kinds of people, the kinds of skills that will be needed to both understand software and understand business processes and how customers think and all that.
So David, let me give it a shot, and then I'd love to hear from Ursula and Andreas on this. This is a very, very pertinent, very important question, by the way. Whether it is you're a developer, a programmer, and then you're looking at what skills do you develop. Of course, I don't want to go down the rat hole of saying, this is the skill, this skill is more important than the other skill, and so on and so forth. But I can tell you one thing, that when you look at it from a business point of view, when you look at it from an industry point of view, what we value as an organization, what we value as an industry is the ability for people to learn. So learnability as a skill by itself is so much more important than anything else that you do. Why? Because technology changes so fast. The stuff that you learn from a specific skill set will change so fast that before you could even start deploying it, it's already changed. So ability for you to keep learning, move from one to the other and get into the adjacencies and then keep going is probably the most important skills that I value when I look at people saying that, are you nimble enough to go move from one to the other in a very quick way? That's how I would look at it. And I believe that is a great talent for anybody to have, without getting into the specifics of, whether skill set A is better than skill set B and so on and so forth. But I will ask my colleagues to comment on that as well.
I think from my perspective, I had, ability to learn, but I would say also there is no one best programmer. I think we will have programmers who really understanding deeply a tool, a domain. We will have the people, Andres, I don't know, who hold it all together, the architects. And then I also think we will have people who are really good in explaining how technology can work in a business context in a specific industry. And that's kind of, in my mind, the three groups I can immediately see. And I'm sure there are many, many more, like people who can write the tools, people who understand how to, the data, how data and, how to best link data with software. I think we will have many different groups of experts. And I think for each programmer, it's really to figure out where do you play best, or where do we play, do you love to work with a business and therefore you get to understand how an industry is ticking, or you really like to solve deep, complex problems? That's where you might be more in the really understanding in depth certain product areas, or you have you like to understand how it all hangs together. That's for me probably the three areas where programmers and developers can, decide where do you want to go, where do they want to go.
Yeah, so my perspective is very inclusive. Because software is now really, it's transitive to it everywhere, is so pervasive that you need skills in. Now we are integrating product people. We're like very, very business centric. How do I achieve the business goal? We got design, who's artistic, right? How it looks better, engages, like the engaging part. And we have engineers as well who are more analytical. So I think it's also that's. So completely agree with Ursula. And to Rajesh point, also the what is that we look at? Really, I mean, in the past we used to look at hard skills more on the programmer, like analytical, mathematical, like all that. But all those aspects are more solved. We are soft skills are so important right now, right? Attitude. What is your attitude to learn, to work in a team, right? Take out hero cultures doesn't work anymore. How does the team culture, how people feel well within the team, all those things are what we look at when we hire. The ability to communicate, it's very, very important as well, right? So anyway, I have passed in a few years in my past. I built video games, and I saw for the first time, because I came from engineering, right? So I saw for the first time how artists and engineers worked. And for me, that was fascinating, because the artists are true artists, right? These guys are like the assets, illumination, like all the lighting, the scenery of a game, with the engineers that are building the AI machines and all that. And in a way, that was like a fast forward that what we're seeing today, where we're interacting all these different roles. And it makes the culture so much more fun as well, because it's much richer, rounder than just, very square engineering. Like, it's very, very rounded. We learned, engineers, like a little bit more square, learn from the other guys.
That old model of the programmer being a nerd who was starting at age 9 was disassembling radios. That those people are still going to be needed, but those people need a much wider range of human skills, and they're going to be working with artists and all kinds of other people. I love that point.
I think it's
we had a very specific.
Yeah, the engineer, like it's maturity of the engineer to assume and to realize that it's not that the engineers used to be heroes, like, oh, we're just going to figure it out and we're going to hack this platform. And that's how we like things to happen. But you need other people. You need other people that don't think like you,
Right. We had a very specific question come in, which I know Ursula has a thought about, which is quantum computing going to be more important, especially for enterprise applications? So what do you think about that, Ursula?
Yeah, quantum computers, of course, will still are decades away. So I think the first hybrid high performance computing quantum are expected mid 2030s. And clearly in some industries, there will be an absolute game changer, because we can solve problems which we can't solve at the moment. So cybersecurity, probably everybody has learned about, or talked about, but financial services, chemical industries, weather forecasting, and will be all areas we can tackle, with quantum computing, or a combination of quantum computing and supercomputing. That said, actually it raises another interesting question of sustainability, because one of the key challenges to quantum computing, or to some supercomputers, is energy consumptions. And that was actually the other point. We are speaking here about the future of software, and my question is, software and IT industry is more, is consuming a significant part of energy in the world. And again, how I think it has balanced out. So we are learning how to be more efficient, but how do we make sure that whatever we are creating is effective and efficient for the future as well? And again, coming back to quantum computer, of course, complex problems like that, like climate change, like weather forecasting, can be addressed with quantum computing. So I think for me, very exciting time when it hits. Will take, as I said, a few more decades before we are able to see it really in action.
Really critical that you mentioned sustainability, because in fact, in my opinion, an awful lot of the software in the future is going to be written in order to save energy and to find ways to do things more efficiently that create less carbon, that contribute less to these very grave climate problems we have. We're getting sort of towards the end of our hour, and a couple key things I wanted to touch on before we ended. Rajesh, I wanted you to talk briefly. There's been a number of investments that Cognizant has made in the last few years. So when you think about buying Softvision being a very huge one, but when you look at all the things that you guys have been doing and what the purpose of it is, how do you feel about that and how it's setting you up for the future of software? Oh, you're muted there.
Sorry, I was on mute. Great question. I think, when you look at what Cognizant is trying to do in the marketplace, we are repositioning ourselves in many ways. I think, I talked about this inflection point where I believe as a company, we have turned the corner in terms of looking at the future, and we have repositioned ourselves from a traditional software company to a much more modern software organizations as we move forward. And the ability for us to position that came from our shift to what we call accelerating a digital portfolio in many ways. And we did that predominantly over the last about 2 to 3 years by acquiring a lot of new assets, if you may. So we spent roughly about $3 billion over the last 24 months or so in terms of acquiring about 19 new companies. And clearly Softvision was one of them, and a very, very important one, because the way we use Softvision is a little different from some of the other acquired assets. And Softvision, we are positioned as our pivot to this whole software product engineering, which means, and as Andreas would tell you, how do we really make the digital engineering work? So we've been buying companies as a tuck-in acquisitions under Softvision. We got Tinroof, we got Magenic, we got Hunter recently. So all of them will go into the Softvision platform as a tuck-in acquisition. So we're building those digital engineering capabilities where we are making the pivot into more of a modern software company. And then Softvision is a great asset for us to sort of do that on in many ways. So we're going to be centering around putting all our muscle around this brand and what we could do, which will pivot the company. But let's not also forget that about 50% of the money that we've spent on these acquisitions are all around the cloud platforms as well, because while software is critical, but no, there's a lot happening around how the cloud is changing the world. So lots of investments around how do we make sure that the hyperscalers, for example, all of the 3 big ones, are making a huge difference. So how do you make sure that we're able to grow with them? So many of those entities around what we do in the cloud area, we're going to sort of lining them up and then building some of those, we talked about the tuck-in acquisitions around building those capabilities so that we'll position as this broader, cloud company. So it's cloud and digital companies, how we are positioning ourselves as, and then, that involves a lot of, for example, work around what we do on data. So there's a lot of components that we need to put together, which will help us to sort of make this pivot and really position Cognizant as a new age company as we move forward. And then a very important piece of that is software, and a very important piece of that is actually what we do with Softvision and the related digital engineering capabilities.
Just before we wrap in a minute, I'm going to ask each of you to talk about the one thing that companies need to do to win in this environment. But I want to go to one thing that I know is a passion of yours, Ursula, that we've talked a lot about the shortage of people. There's also a great concern right now in business about social responsibility. There is a vast part of the world that is not in our modern economy. And I know you see a conjunction here where companies can really kind of think about those two things together in terms of developing new talent.
Yeah, I think the huge advantage COVID-19 has brought to the world that talent can be anywhere in the world. And we have not all, clearly India is dear to our heart. All our, we have over 200,000 engineers in India, which pay a huge, huge contribution to what we're doing. But So, looking at, help Africa, Asia, other parts of Asia, Latin America, and opening this whole women. Again, women are always, different diversity, neurodiversity thinking. I mean, this, I think Andres used the word inclusive, and I think the technology industry is one of the, innovative modern organizations in the world, and really embracing everybody who is interested to join us is something which I really, really value and encourage.
Great. And, Andreas, just watching you and your energy, you're not like the typical typical coder, right? You have clearly enormous human skills, emotional intelligence, etc. I don't know. I guess I'm not. I'm just trying to invite you to say, is that you are obviously the leader for a reason of Softvision, and you're modeling something very different from what the coders used to be, right? So is that something that you're trying to build throughout the whole culture of Softvision? And just take that anywhere you want.
That's a big question. I believe.
Of course, Andres, we will not comment whether we agree with this judgment.
Yeah.
Clearly, he's got a lot of energy. You're not going to argue about that.
I mean, at the end of the day, what gets you up in the morning, right? It's like, what gets you up in the morning? I think, we have a position of privilege in society as a company, as Cognizant, with a scale to really make an impact. And the purpose that we have is to connect people with the modern economy, really. I mean, there are so many opportunities that we can actually offer, and we're just about to be unleashed. I mean, we're just starting, I think, to Ursula's point. I mean, I completely embrace your thoughts. Africa, I've also been thinking we have to talk about it. We haven't talked about this, but there's so many other, it's India, it's our core, absolutely our core. And we can expand there, except so many people, but we can bring people in this incubation that really, are not ready or don't have the means to perhaps, work in this world because they didn't access to that educational channel. We can work with education, but we can also provide our own education. The model that we're bringing through Softvision is called communities and guilds. And it's a model that is fostered around getting people together around single skills that we developed inside. And we're rolling those playbooks in order to be to make this more sustainable, right? But that is what really, if you ask me what really motivates, and I think that's where the engineer needs to understand that this is going to be a constant learning. This world software is taking so many facets and so many dimensions that they have to have an open mind. The traditional engineer has to kind of open up and allow people that are bringing, that we are incubating, become coaches. All that culture is something that can be developed, and we're codifying that culture in order to roll it out to the bigger Cognizant. So for me, that's in my bucket list.
Very exciting world to be in. So quickly, each of you, just in a couple words, what's the one thing you think companies will need to do to win, given everything we've said? Rajesh, start with you.
Well, we just spoke about it. I think every company is going to be a software company. So it's important for every organization in the world to see what is the best way for them to pivot to this digital transformation if they have not done it already, right? So it is important for them to look at this as a core of their strategy, not as an IT thing.
Right, great. Ursula.
Figure out how to manage business transformation and change. Many change projects or business transformation projects fail. I think it's 70% is the last statistic I had, and clearly we are in a world of change. So learning how to do that is my recommendation.
Wonderful. Andres.
And the last one, which is associated, is look at your culture, right? The value systems, the processes are associated, the behaviors, the governance. Look at how the culture could accelerate or foster your transformation or destroy it. Be very clear before you put money down in a big transformation program. Look at your culture and have people come and tell you, these are the things that you should really look at because these are blocking your progress. It's like open-mindedness. Yes.
We've had what I think for many will have been a very useful as well as very engaging hour of intense conversation. So thank you to all three of you. Thank you to our audience, and enjoy Programmers Week, enjoy International Programmers Day, and thank you all so much for letting me be part of this. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mark Grand. I am a platform architect with Softvision. I've been with the company for, it'll be going on 2 years in